evidence of the scattering. Part F, Europe. Okay, so you should be coming over from Part E of Part 10 in the series. These videos are a part of a docu-series and should be watched from the beginning in order if you're going to understand what is being presented. So please, if you have not watched Parts 1 through 10E, please stop this video and start back from video 1 and watch them consecutively for true context. This is Part F of Part 10, which is dealing with the evidence of the scattering. In the first part, we dealt with the history in the United States. In Part B, we dealt with South America. Part C was the Caribbean. Part D, we dealt with Africa. And the last part, we dealt with the most least known and mentioned region, which is Asia. As we close out this discussion on the evidence of our scattering, we will deal with the last region on our map, which is Europe. Remember, our Father said he would scatter us to the four corners of the earth, and he clearly lives up to his word. We are just so blinded by race and skin color, we are not able to see the world biblically. I hope that by now that we have gone through all this evidence, you can now see this world with a more biblical mindset. Let's close this out and look at Europe, because we are scattered in Europe all the same way. Now, most of the Hebrews that are in Europe are Yahudim that converted to Christianity through the history of the Roman Church, but also there are some that came during the slave trade. Let's take a look.
So let me ask you, because you've got a lot of these specials which are creating hits and causing, really popular around the world. In Fari is the New Black, as one of them is called, you say there are words that French people are scared of. You give an example of white people being scared to say the word noir, which is black in French, obviously. They actually say black in English instead. And as we know, in 2018, your National Assembly removed the word race from the first article of its constitution. Can you explain to an audience why the system is so wary, so reluctant to talk about black, brown, white, Asian? Everybody's meant to be just French in France.
That's a French culture. It's universalism, because they think we should act and be the same way, and also I think they're afraid about saying those words, because behind those words there is issues and subjects about it. If we say black, like in the French word, that's a big word to them, because it was back then an insult. When you say to someone black, it was something insulting, and so they have to rethink and they have to tell the story again, because the story they told us, that's not the story we should listen to when we were a child.
So he's saying that in order to hide the racism in France, they literally don't use the word racism, and they just avoid it. They don't even use the French word noir, which means black. They use the English word black to categorize them. But everyone knows that there's racism in France.
I don't really see a rise in racism. It's always been there. But people used to be hypocrites about it and didn't actually say what they really thought.
Je pense pas que le racisme augmente en France.
I don't think racism is rising.
Il a toujours existé malheureusement. Mais en revanche, il y a une médiatisation excessive de l'ensemble des faits divers, de tout ce qui peut arriver en fait en France.
Et oui, je pense que le racisme augmente en France.
I think that racism is on the rise in France, mostly since Sarkozy was in power when most minorities were
Le quinquennat de
stigmatized.
Sarkozy, on considère ça maintenant comme quelque chose.
It's now okay to be racist, but there is no reason for a republic that defends liberty, equality, and brotherhood to just sweep equality aside.
You see, they know that there's racism. Let's look at the origins of racism in France.
Now it's time for today's perspective, and we're talking about racism today. I'm going to take you back, first of all, to 1739. Now, it was then that the Royal Academy of Sciences in Bordeaux in southwestern France announced a contest for the best essay on the sources of, as it was put at the time, blackness. The question what is the physical cause of blackness or African hair? What is the cause of black degeneration? The result was 16 essays written in French and Latin, and the authors, well, they range from naturalists to physicians to theologians. My guest today has worked with a team to translate them and written headnotes as well on each essay, which really lay bare the origins of anti-black racism in the West. Andrew Curran is here in Paris at the moment. Good to have you with us on a book tour with the book. It's called Who's Black and Why? A Hidden Chapter from the 18th Century Invention of Race. He joins us now. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much.
First of all, just take us back to 1739. Tell us more about the origins of these essays and how on earth it all came about in the first place.
And by 1720 or so, they got much more interested in what we would call proto-anthropology and the sources of human origins. And this is a big question during the Enlightenment, a time when we were moving from a more kind of religious understanding of the universe to a more secular understanding. And so it's natural that people start thinking about human origins and anthropology, etc.
We're talking 300 years ago. Presumably some of the answers that came back are pretty shocking, particularly in the current climate.
Yes, I think it's important to understand that race as a construct really comes into being during the 18th century. For a long time, the words nation, people, gens in French were used to describe different kinds of people. And then ultimately, the word race was being used. And this is a move from, for example, the term variety, which is a botanical metaphor, to a natural metaphor, and to a zoological metaphor. And it's an idea that humans are being subjected to the same methods that animals were being subjected to. For a long time, humans were not classified. And some people are explaining the idea of blackness as a result of a degeneration from an original white prototype. Other people are looking into the interior of black bodies. There's even somebody who was an anatomist on a plantation in Guyana, and he said that there was an internal blackness. And this means that blackness and the idea of race is moving from the outside of the body to the inside of the body. And this actually gave credence and information, raw data, if you will, to the classifiers, the great classifiers of the 18th century who actually break up humankind into different categories. And this is incredibly important because there are centuries of xenophobia, centuries of stereotypes, and they're finally being able to be organized in much more kind of rigid classification schemes.
Yeah, there's another one I noticed about falling from God's grace was one of the ones that was come up with. Mm-hmm. I mean, presumably from what you're saying then, the people who were writing these at the time had quite a lot of credibility.
Yes, there was a lot of credibility from certain people. I think that one of the things that's very important to note that the one person that went on was the anatomist, and he was encouraged by the Bordeaux Academy to publish his findings. And his view that there was this kind of internal blackness, black blood, black bile, went into all sorts of, went into Buffon's thought. The great French naturalist Thomas Jefferson talked about it. So you can see that this contest really was a real change, a sea change, because it was the first moment that science was really claiming the right to decide what the kind of conceptual status of a subspecies of humans was.
And do you see that? This is why we look at race in the way that we do. It has been indoctrinated for centuries and is just a way of thought. They basically were teaching that our black skin was a curse, talking about falling from God's grace while not attaching to anything he has actually said, because we did fall from grace. We were cursed, but our curse wasn't black skin. The curses that he speaks of are directly in the scriptures. They literally go out of their way to classify us by our skin color. And look, the same troubles that we have with racism in the United States is prevalent amongst them.
In blood red on bandage white, they wrote the names of those who have died after altercations with the police. Decades of mistrust fueling a gathering of thousands, demanding a new relationship between police and France's ethnic minorities. This protest was organised by the sister of 24-year-old Adama Traore. He died 4 years ago, having been detained for not carrying identity documents. To them, he is France's George Floyd. Up to 15,000 joined together from across Paris's diverse communities. This was to be a walk through the streets of a nation built on liberty and equality, with every exit from the Place de la République closed. The freedom to leave was lost. On the ground, they chanted that Black Lives Matter. From above, far-right activists sought their supremacy, unfurling a White Lives Matter banner, only to find their message cut to shreds by those whose windows it darkened. With such polarised views, it was inevitable the trouble would come, and so it did. Police under attack themselves, firing towards demonstrators to clear the square. Evening brought a day of relative peace to a noisy end.
This protest highlights the strife at the heart of French society. Generations now fearful and distrustful of those responsible for their safety.
France can no longer ignore the crisis in its communities. Somehow an understanding must be found, and amidst the fury, a peace extended.
It's the same plight and struggle, just different region. So that's France. But again, it's all over Europe. Let's look at Germany.
We see being German as something defined by skin color. Being German means being white, and those who aren't white are essentially newcomers and don't have the same right to be part of society as white people.
This is exactly the right moment to look at Black German history and how it's always been a part of German history, an important part.
At what became known as the Berlin West Africa Conference in 1884, the European powers carved up the continent among themselves, without African participation. Germany then also became a colonial power, ruling over Togo, Cameroon, German East Africa, and German Southwest Africa. Even before the 19th century, Germans had been profiting from the slave trade. Now, colonists seized entire territories, culminating in a genocide in Namibia in 1904. Meanwhile, growing numbers of Africans were arriving in Germany.
The colonial period is important for the emergence of a black community because it was the first time that hundreds, if not thousands, of black people were able to come to Germany.
At the Hanover Zoo in 1913, Ethiopians were hired as contract workers. They were put on display, often with their families. Visitors paid an entrance fee to see them. As colonists were committing genocide in Africa, back home in Germany, the middle class were being won over to the so-called colonial adventure.
This exoticization, romanticization, this idea of let's take the family to the zoo, like we know today. But instead of looking at animals, we get to see exotic people. Except these people weren't representing their own culture or communities. It was a staged spectacle and had nothing to do with who they actually were.
The first state-organized colonial exhibition in Germany took place in 1896 in Berlin. 106 men, women, and children were brought in from German colonies. Photographs show how people were racially degraded and forced to be exhibited. After the First World War, German imperialist expansion was brought to an end, at least for the time being. The Treaty of Versailles resulted in Germany ceding its colonies. At the same time, French troops occupied the Rhineland. Among their ranks were African soldiers, which German nationalists saw as a humiliation. They launched a racist smear campaign, calling it the Black Shame. That propaganda in turn fueled racism against all black people across Germany into a far more dangerous form.
Same thing in Germany. We are just black people, and we are oppressed. Let's look at another country. Let's look at Belgium.
What is it to be a good Belgian in 2018? I don't know what it means. Maybe to be white, have blue eyes and blonde hair.
29-year-old Cecile Junga isn't someone easily forgotten. Actress, comedian, broadcaster, she answers to all with ease. And yet when she looks in the mirror, she can still find herself struggling for place in the country of her birth.
I don't know what is it. Me, I really feel Belgian. I am deeply Belgian. I am supportive of the Red Devils, and I like beers.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Heureuse d'être en votre...
Junga delivers the weather report for Belgium's public broadcaster RTBF. Born in Brussels to Angolan and Congolese parents, she says she learned to use humor to deflect insults growing up. But the insults have grown along with her public profile. And this summer, something broke.
Woman called to say that I was too dark and she can't see me on TV. And I was like, it's crazy. It's like,
at first, she tried to shrug it off, but it was one insult too many.
It's not normal. I work here, I am in my country, I am born in Belgium, I'm fed up of all this.
And so she posted a video online.
Voilà quoi, recevoir des sales négresses dans mon pays, en fait, c'est pas drôle quoi. Donc en fait, moi j'en ai marre.
It was raw and emotional, and it blew the lid off the not-so-quiet racism that has been allowed to fester in Belgium. Matonge, a small neighborhood in the heart of Brussels, named after a district in Kinshasa in the years just before what was then called the Belgian Congo gained its independence in 1960. Immigration from the former colonies, including Rwanda and Burundi, was never encouraged. But the Central African community here numbers well over 100,000 people.
I hope you're able to see this now. There is a group all around the world that have no identity besides being labeled by their skin color. They try to adapt to the nation that they're in, but they're not accepted. They deal with oppression and no equality. And they're given no specific reason except that they are black. This is what you need to understand when looking at the world right now. Being black, that label of being black, that's the label that they use for Israelites scattered around the world. And as long as people look at us as black, they don't recognize the validity of the scriptures that's right in their face. To the elite rulers of this world, those in these satanic secret societies, when they made the label of black people, they are actually referring to the chosen Hebrew Israelites of Israel and Judah that are spoken about specifically in Bible prophecy. And they are hiding it from the masses so that you are not ready for what Yahuwah is going to do in the last days. But I'm not going to go too far, too fast. Let's keep going, and we'll go to the last country. We'll end this part with the UK.
We no longer see a Britain where the system is deliberately rigged against minorities. This in a report commissioned because of the Black Lives Matter protests last year. The authors go on to say they recognise the idealism of well-intentioned young people, but go on to question whether a narrative claiming that nothing has improved will achieve anything. The chair of the report, Dr. Tony Sewell, grew up in Brixton. In Windrush Square today, from what some people have read of the report, most that we spoke to here did not agree with it.
Bunch of lies, man. Bunch of lies. If you talk the truth and stop cover up, it's about time we get what we deserve. You understand me? Simple things.
I'm sorry to say it is a lie, because being black is obvious. I can't voice out certain opinion because I might be judged, or it might be taken out of context.
You know, people are much more wise to the facts about being overtly racist.
Mm-hmm.
It's institutionalized. It's subtle, it's microaggressions, it's things that people do and say in order to diminish you, in order to reduce you.
This isn't the first report looking into race in the UK. There have been many previously. The Lammy report, the Macpherson report, McGregor-Smith, these all made recommendations as well. And there have also been flashpoints where people from ethnic minority communities have questioned how fair the UK really is. This is Brixton in 1981, tensions erupting between the black community and the police.
The inevitable explosion of steam by a community which feels the police have been picking on them recently.
Fires burned for 3 days. The Scarman report looked into that and said there was no doubt that racial disadvantage was a fact of current British life. Then 12 years later, the murder of Stephen Lawrence in South London brought racial conflict to the surface again. The investigation into his death was flawed. The 1999 Macpherson report found the Metropolitan Police guilty of what it called institutional racism. Since then, there have been 6 reviews into race disparities in the UK. The one before the report released today was the Windrush review. That found the Home Office showed ignorance and thoughtlessness on the issue of race. The aim of the latest report is to change the narrative around racial disparities. Previous reviews about race in the UK have said we're far from equality, but this one seems to suggest we're closer than that.
You see, I could keep going on and on with this. For me, it was very hard putting all of this together. A lot of it could really provoke your flesh. But when you live in the reality and why this is the case, it then can bring you back to the importance of living in the truth. The world hides the truth around the falsehood of skin color and race. And that's why this series is about the fact that we are not black people. And that does not just go for the people in the United States, but the oppressed Hebrew Israelites around the world without knowledge of themselves and who they are. And please don't mistake this. Though we're talking about inequality and poverty and things of that nature, this is not about civil rights or helping minorities. That right there is an agenda that the world has created. We have to personally dig deeper into why these people suffer from the same plight all over the world. And when you dig into history, you can see it's about the curses, and it has nothing to do with skin color. We have all these churches all around the world, but we have a very small segment of the population that actually looks at the world through a biblical mindset. You should look at that and understand why. So in this part 10, when discussing the evidence of the scattering, in parts A through F, I have taken you through the scattering around the world. We have started in North America, where the plight of the Hebrews in America is well known. Then in part B, we went to South America. Part C dealt with the Caribbean, part D, Africa, part E, Asia, and now we're dealing in Europe. I've shown you the Caribbean, I've shown you South America with Brazil, Colombia, Argentina. I've shown you in Africa with the South Africans in the Congo. We went to Asia with Yemen and Turkey, and India and Pakistan, and then throughout Europe. You have seen the scattered people of Israel who have been oppressed because they are under the curses, and there have been many different agendas against them. Unfortunately, the ignorant, and most of them are Christians, they only want to see it as being about skin color. But in a biblical mindset, you must understand it's very much deeper than that. The point that needs to be understood and what I am showing is the evident validity of the word and our Father's prophecy that he will scatter his children all around the world and what will be their plight for disobedience. The Christian church has pretty much ignored this prophecy, but this is biblical and it's extremely important. Christianity has people living with a worldview that is not biblically accurate, and it hides people from the truth and the relevance of the scriptures. So people use the Bible as more of a metaphor than actually understanding that it has everything to do with the world that we're in. It has people partially apply the Bible to their lives while they live as hypocrites. And this is leading the world to the Antichrist and not to who all these people actually think they're worshiping. So for me making this series, this part was very important because it's really important to really illustrate all this so that anyone that desires to see evidence of the scriptures, you can now see it clearly. If you look at all of this evidence of the same people scattered all around the world and still really only think this is about skin color, while you also claim to be a believer in the scriptures, you're a hypocrite. What you believe in is completely false. This is pure evidence of the validity of the word. And the thing is that the next point where I'm leading to all this is why this even matters. Because I know the mainstream Christian view, and they say, okay, yes, he said that he would scatter them, but okay, based on Christianity, you have Jesus, and so none of this should even matter. And that's the feedback I get from most people. And I get it. But you should ask yourself, do you think that there's power in living in lies and falsehoods? All that you're talking about is religion and your indoctrination. But if you can see that there is a major truth in this world that has been hidden and masqueraded around skin color, and the topic is like taboo so that no one wants to even tackle it, I want you to consider, what if there's a major biblical truth that is beneath this subject that the world, who believes they're Christian, they have no idea about? You know, all these people, they love talking about conspiracy this and New World Order that, and this about Trump and what they're doing to the water and what they're doing over here and all this stuff. They love talking about conspiracies. They love knowing that there's some puppet masters doing all this around the world. But when the real agendas are being put out, they say, oh my gosh, this is division. This is all this. What you don't recognize is the reason that you follow this channel is because I've been pointing out all these lies for many years. But there is a major plot twist hanging over the head of most Christians and must be brought out. And for most people that have a problem with this topic, you don't actually recognize that this is grace being extended to you. You're almost out of time though. The actual case in truth is that there is a major truth being hidden amongst everyone in this world. And over the past 10 parts of this series, I have meticulously been building up to all of this. We're almost there to understand why this matters biblically. But listen, if you still don't get it at this point, it's okay. We will get there. But if you don't take anything else from this, please take this. For those who claim to be believers in the Bible, there is no separation between the world and the scriptures. The scriptures are real, and the truth of them can be seen in our current world. So please know and understand that when examining the world, and you are claiming to be a believer, you must apply the Bible in your worldview. And if you're applying the Bible in your worldview, it all must fit. You can't just apply what you want to apply in order to hold your worldview. It all must fit. You cannot look at the world only secularly and then say that you believe in the Bible and that's your authority. That's hypocrisy. Another thing I want to bring out is that many people that become awakened, they often wonder if they are actually Israel. And if they are actually Israel, they wonder what tribe they are from and what not. What about me is the question I get the most often. Understand, that's a difficult question to answer in regards to an individual person. And in regards to your tribe, that is not a question I can answer at all. In all this, I am not only talking about the Yahudim, the Jews. I am not only talking about them, I am talking about both houses, Israel and the Yahudim. They're all scattered and they're all a part of these curses. This is not just about Judah. This is Jacob's trouble, and Jacob has been in trouble. So it's not about one tribe, it's about all tribes. They're all mixed in here. When all prophecy is fulfilled, the Most High will provide us with the understanding of what tribe is who and all that, and what it is that we need to know. Right now, what we're doing is waking up, and that's the most important thing. The question about what about you is not a question that I can answer, but it is something that the Most High will reveal because he prophesied that he would do the awakening. And as someone clarified for me, it's not me doing the awakening. I'm just doing my part to bring clarity to questions that you may have had. He prophesied that he would do the awakening, and that brings me to finally discussing the dry bones prophecy. I've spoken about it in every video, but it's time that I will finally address it and bring it out. And that's what we're going to do in the next video. So we will continue on, and I will explain what the dry bones prophecy is. Right now though, trust and believe many of you are the dry bones, and it's time that you're awakened. And this series is trying to do just that. So now that you understand who you are a descendant from the house of Israel and Judah, and your life has been cursed because of the rebellion of you and your ancestors. Please continue on to the next part and allow me to show you what it means to be the dry bones. I hope by now that you have made it this far in the series, it has at least got you thinking. Again, right now, many of you are the dry bones. And as Ezekiel 37 verse 11 says, you may believe your hope is lost and you yourselves are cut off. But I am here to show you the complete opposite is true. Your hope is not lost and you yourselves are not cut off if you just awaken and be who you truly are. So I will show you. Click the link to the next video and let's talk some more. Be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay. Thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like this and share this video with your family and friends. Again, as a reminder, this is not just a video to share, but to watch together with your family and your friends. It is intended to start the conversations that many of you all can lead personally. So use this and help your family and friends that allow you to. This is part 10 of the series. Click the link or just move on to the next video in the playlist. As always, I want to thank all who donate and contribute to this ministry. I thank you sincerely for your support. You have been a blessing and truly a great help with this series. This series would not be done without you. I thank you sincerely. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again everyone for watching. See you in part 11. I love you all.